Welcome to PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing, where we explore one maxim from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 points for healing dualistic mind each day to integrate the practice into our lives. Today is day 12, and we're working with point 3, turn challenges into opportunity. Maxim 12 reads, lay all the blame at the feet of the one and only culprit. What does that mean? Blame is a good word to start. We have a very strong habit whenever something goes wrong to look for somebody to blame or something to pick on, basically to turn the finger everywhere except what this maxim calls the one and only culprit. Before I even mention the one and only culprit, I want to be very clear that it's not saying that you are the culprit. You are to blame for everything. What it is saying is that we all have this sense of a self, something that's single, separate, and distinct from others. And out of that belief in a self, which we have from the moment we're born, all kinds of self-clinging, self-centeredness, the kinds of things that we speak about as selfishness or ego in normal everyday language come about. The one and only culprit this maxim is talking about is not even selfishness or self-centeredness or all of those things, but the root of them, that mistaken belief in a lasting, single, distinct self that has no connection to others, that is independent and continues. That belief in a self is what spawns all of the mess, the binary thinking of self and other, good and bad, the attachment, aversion, all of that comes from this belief in a self, which is a figment of our imagination. Now, let's be clear, that doesn't mean that you and everybody that is around you is a figment of your imagination. Buddhism is very, very subtle in its philosophical understanding of experience. An individual is a combination of all kinds of different things: feelings, emotions, thoughts, experience, history, a body, so forth. That's an individual, as we can see in our own experience. Nothing in Buddhism is ever challenging our experience. Buddhism does challenge our misperception. And the misperception is not towards an individual, but that sense of I, of me, as existing in this permanent, autonomous, unitary way, completely divorced from all else. This is the one and only culprit. When we look at anything that is disturbing us, this maxim is saying, pause for a moment. Take a look at whether self-importance, self-centeredness, any of these kinds of ideas of primacy that come up from the idea of this permanent, single, autonomous self are involved. This can help us gain some perspective. It's not about blaming ourselves, but starting to unearth these unexamined assumptions about who we are and how things are happening. Another way of thinking about this is we've probably spent a good amount of our life looking for something else to blame or looking to find a way to get out of our own accountability. How's that been working for you? Has it helped you feel better? Does it make you feel empowered? Does it transform your experience in a way that brings possibility, happiness, and growth? Does it help you rise above all of the difficulties in your life? If not, next time something happens, lay all of the blame at the feet of this mistaken belief in a single, lasting, independent self.
So I'm wondering if this sense of self gives rise only to self-aggrandizement, or does it also sometimes give rise to a diminished sense of self or a victimized sense of self in a way? Is that also side of this misperception?
Definitely. There's an infinite range of mistake when it comes to this belief in a self. The point, the root of it is that we think of ourselves as only one way and always that way, completely immune to causes and conditions, impact from other people, and so forth. In some ways, it can be even more harmful when that manifests in a way that is about hurting ourselves or seeing ourselves as less than, because it's very hard to get out of that thinking if we also believe this is what I am, instead of perceiving things, as this maxim is asking us to do, as a product of a misperception. In that sense, whether we're feeling arrogant or whether we're feeling like we're victimizing ourselves, we can get a little bit of distance and recognize these are things that are happening. These are things that are occurring. It's not what I am.
If we correct this misperception of ourselves, how might that affect our perception of and relationship with others?
This is at the root of Buddhism. So when we speak of the ignorance that is the root cause of samsara, it's this mistaken belief in a self, as I just described. When that is uprooted altogether, that is enlightenment. How might you engage even before enlightenment, as that idea of a self starts to loosen and we can hold ourselves more lightly? What happens is, instead of operating out of this silent assumption that we are separate, stuck in a lasting way of being, a monolithic entity, we start to really stretch into the hugeness of who we are, our interconnection with all beings, with the environment, the fact that we are changing constantly. We may be unhappy with ourselves because of something we did one minute. The next minute, it's a whole other experience. We can move into each moment with freshness and lightness, starting a new page every time, instead of feeling stuck in our mistakes or in the past.
So I understand that it's not useful for us to see ourselves as these monolithic, permanent, separate beings. And at the same time, I know it can sometimes be useful for us to find ways of thinking about ourselves, whether it's, Myers-Briggs or Enneagram types or astrological signs, that there are a lot of different ways that we use to get some understanding of ourselves. How do we balance that out with not getting too firm about what that self is?
This really relates to what in Buddhism is called the two truths, how things appear relatively and how they are ultimately. The Buddha himself talked about, I did this, I did that when I was a child, etc. I don't think he ever took the Myers-Briggs test, but the point is that you can understand that these are useful conventions to say me, my, mine. I'm type 5 on the Enneagram. I am an INTP on the Myers-Briggs scale, whatever it might be. These are useful conventions. They're information about processes that are happening. When we take that test and we feel like this is it, this is who I am, none of those tests are meant to brand you for life. They're meant to give you information about how to respond to the world in a way that is skillful for your present way of being. But that doesn't mean that you might not change, that you might not grow, that you might not hold all of these things in balance. Most of the tests, the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, other personality tests, other different ways of describing ourselves, are all envisioning a growth, a balance, a movement towards a much more holistic way of holding ourselves that isn't limiting. Don't limit yourself. You're huge. You're beautiful. Why limit yourself to this very separate, stagnant individual thing that never changes? It's not real, and it's painful.
This has been Yeshe and Tanya on day 12 of PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing. Tune in daily for more maxims from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 Points for Healing Dualistic Mind. Check the episode notes for more resources and email us, sparks@prajnafire.com, with any questions. May all beings benefit.